Okay, hopefully that's working. Did I hit the right button this time?
Well, we should just have two separate recordings, and one will be 2 seconds, and one will be hopefully an hour.
Fingers crossed. Otherwise, we're going to need to record again.
Oh, all right. Well, let's get on with it then. Welcome,
Yep.
everyone, to We're Not Helpful, a podcast about books, recommendations, our thoughts and opinions on them. As always, I am Eloise, and joining me, as always, is Brayton and Julian. Hello.
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 How are you?
Yeah. I'll get it. I'm planning to get into it.
But yeah, look,
with
we'll
how
get into
am.
it.
I
It is
feel
a
I've
get into it episode.
Yeah, I feel like this episode might be a bit different to our usual ones.
I was thinking perhaps we could record, like I could record like a content warning or something afterwards, and we can tag that onto the beginning before the intro starts.
Well, let's get out. Well, let's get through the happy stuff first.
Okay, yes.
And then we'll give a warning for anyone if they want to stop listening at that point, feel free.
But remind them they can listen to the following episode. Don't just leave.
Yeah, please don't leave.
And actually, you should go back and re-listen to every episode several times after that too.
At least 2 or 3 times. It is compulsory.
Yeah, there will be a quiz.
Excellent. I wanted to quickly talk about the book that I finished reading just after the last time we recorded all together, which was Normal People by, who was it? By Sally Rooney. And I had mentioned about how I didn't think that particular novel fit with the structure of what storytelling is. So that was the last episode we recorded. Julian, would you like to remind everyone the proper structure of a story? What it contains?
Orientation, complication, rising action, climax, and resolution.
Right. I am pretty sure this story got to the complication and didn't get out of that. And I don't know if anyone else has read this book or seen the television series, and I don't actually know how close the television series is to the book. I would love to discuss it with someone, please, because I feel like it was just complication the entire time. This book was a POV book of the two main characters, so it's a guy and a girl, and it switches their POV, and both of them are unreliable narrators the entire time. They don't communicate at all properly together. They never say what they're actually thinking or feeling to each other. And they just keep making the same mistakes all the way through to the end. And I say end liberally because, frankly, it seemed like Sally just stopped writing. It was like she got to the point in the story and went, that's enough now. Like there was no climax resolution. It was just, it could keep going from here. And okay, I get that books can sometimes end open-ended so that you can think, where do they go from here? What happens next? It's up to my imagination. No, this was literally like they just got to a point and then we just don't get to be part of that journey or story anymore. I found it very frustrating. Sorry if anyone really likes this book. Please do write in. I would love to have a conversation or a fight about it. It's my new Moby Dick. So actually, no, that's not true. It's not as bad as that.
It reminds me of the Odd Thomas series by Dean Koontz from about the 4th book onwards, where everything was supposed to be building to this amazing revelation and climax, and it just didn't.
And I can't remember if, I know we spoke about that in a fairly early episode of the podcast. I can't remember. Did you actually finish reading them, or did I tell you that I had finished reading them and I didn't understand what the ending was? I didn't feel like anything got resolved either.
I gave up somewhere around book 5 when it was very clear he didn't know who this main character, like Odd Thomas's female friend, when it was very clear Dean Koontz had no idea who this character was meant to be at all.
Yep. It seemed like he was giving an answer, but when I was reading it, I didn't understand what the answer was, and I just felt dumb for not prizing it out of what I was reading.
According to places like Reddit and various other book forums, no one got it.
Oh, good. It's not just
me. It must have just been him who understood what he was talking about. But I did read how it all finished off. I'm like, really? That's That's where you're going with this. Okay. I'm glad
Yeah.
I stopped reading.
It was certainly a unique way to finish because you certainly didn't think that that's how it could have ended. And I felt like, okay, sure, whatever. Great. Fantastic.
First three books were great.
They were, yes. Wonderful stories.
Didn't you? I remember at uni, there was a group of you that read those books, and you had a theory that he pumped out like 10 books in really quick succession and then just released them sporadically over the course of many years.
That may have been with Richie.
Yeah.
We discussed the Odd Thomas series quite a bit at the time because he also was a huge fan of the first couple.
Hi, Richie.
Hi, Richie.
Richie, write in. If you finish the series, let's get your thoughts on what the ending was for you.
Please, yes. I'd love to hear Richie's theories on that, actually. I wasn't part of that conversation. I remember us talking about it, but I don't recall I don't recall a theory about he had just written them and was releasing them sporadically over years. So
I'm sure it's not true, but I think it was just a fun little fan theory they had bouncing. Yes. I haven't read the book, so I have no hat in this race.
First one's amazing. Read the first one. It's a great story.
I also remembered as well the fact that we had that topic about the right ways to write or the wrong ways to write, or is there a right way or a wrong way? I funnily enough came across a post by Neil Gaiman where someone sent him an ask saying, how many silly tropes am I allowed to put into one story? And his response was, as many as you're like, it's your story. There are no rules. So there we go. We have it from the great Neil Gaiman that there are no rules to storytelling.
One might say that's the only rule.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that settles it. I'll just delete that episode then.
Great. We'll just put that meme in its place.
Yeah, perfect.
So what else are you guys reading this week? Have you read anything interesting? Anything to recommend? Anything to not recommend?
I have not read anything this week.
Julian, we're on a podcast about books.
Yes, but I'm not very helpful. Hence the title.
I forgot.
I am working through Morningstar. Yes, Morningstar by Pierce Brown, the third book in the Red Rising series, all about civil war in Mars. In Mars? On Mars. Actually, Mars. In Mars too. And around Mars. The whole solar system.
Interesting sci-fi story then, I'm assuming.
It's really good.
Ooh.
If you're into sci-fi, the Red Rising series, or at least from what I've heard, the first 3 is a complete trilogy. And then there's another 3 or 4 books that are currently out after that, which I've seen mixed reactions. Fans, majority say yes, they're still amazing, but some people were just in it for the main kind of trilogy story and were perfectly satisfied after that.
Yeah, that's a fair enough reaction to have sometimes. Like, I never read the continued stories of Tomorrow When the War Began. I know there was, what was it, 6 original stories, and then he wrote a further 3. Something like that. And then he wrote like a further 3 stories, which was sort of set after the war had been declared over. I'm like, I just have no interest to continue on. Mostly because I found it was just too fantastical in the end. I felt like there is not a country in the world that could properly invade Australia to the point of taking over the entire country. We are too big. We have allies. And the fact that 5 teenagers with fertilizer bombs managed to overthrow this entirely powerful foreign nation was just like, you know what? My disbelief is not suspended anymore. Couldn't really.
I enjoyed the first novel.
First novel was all right, but it just sort of kept going on that the main character, what was her name? Ellie,
yeah.
Ellie, yeah, like the fact that she became a prisoner of war and then she like escaped and helped the people to overthrow, and I don't know. Kudos for her being a strong female character, I suppose.
Again, I have not read those series. I have seen the movie.
I hear the movie doesn't do it very good because it really just ends because it's sequel fodder and then it didn't get renewed.
It's fine for what it is.
I enjoyed it.
I hear the ABC series was actually very good. Had Deborah Melman.
So I've heard.
All I remember from that series is that by I think book 7, the kids are very traumatized by their
Oh,
experiences.
yes. Everyone has very severe post-traumatic stress disorder.
Which, I
Fair
mean,
enough.
hats off to John Marsden for going there.
Yes, because some really horrific things do happen, and they see some rather horrific things. And it was, yeah. And the fact that it's aimed at teenagers to read, I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
Fair enough.
I have also, since finishing Normal People, I started reading Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. I'm about halfway through, and so far it's a very good mystery. It's very quirky, kind of funny. I'm looking forward to the fact that it's also apparently being adapted into a TV series, and I'm also looking forward to reading the sequel. No, not the sequel. I think it's just a different book. Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. So yes, I thoroughly do recommend Benjamin Stevenson, who's apparently an Australian comedian, though I don't think I'm familiar with any of his work.
No,
As a comedian, I mean.
no, I can't help you there. Sorry.
Yes.
I hope it turns out to have not been anyone on the train, because that would have to be a very ironic title there.
The reverse of Murder on the Orient Express. Spoilers for Murder on the Orient Express. Sorry.
That novel is nearly 100 years old. I think we're okay.
Okay.
You know what? I did not know how that ended until I watched the Kenneth Branagh movie.
Yeah, same here. I was like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't know how this ends.
It was great. For a 100-year-old novel, I had no idea how it ended.
It's a very good ending where you go, wow, well played, Agatha Christie. Well played.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it must have been a really unique way of ending a murder mystery story at the time. Do we know if there were a lot of murder mystery kind of novels before Agatha Christie? Or did she just popularize it?
She might have just been really good at them.
I have to look up.
We had Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're pretty obscure.
Oh, okay. I might give them a read.
Yeah.
Spoilers, I have read every Sherlock Holmes story. I have an omnibus.
All right. We have an email from Sylvia.
Yeah. Yay. Email corner with Sylvia again.
Excellent. Let's see if we can remember what we talked about in 2 episodes ago, because we released our interview with Kate.
Impossible. There's no way of knowing.
Nope. I apologize, Sylvia. I may have to paraphrase some of this. We'll see how we go. Essentially, her first thing, she says, we talked about rats in Victorian housing and how they were the managers of the centres. If we remember that little conversation.
She could write anything and we would just go, okay, sure.
No,
what did we say about this?
What did we say?
We said that the houses in Victoria, or she said the houses in Victoria were run by rats. And then we imagined little landlord rats demanding rent.
That's funny. I'm going to write that down and write a story about it. I think I must have said that last time.
Yeah, she clarifies she meant overrun by rats.
Okay. I'm sure we probably knew that too.
Oh, yes, but I'm all in for the bit. She says, I had this image in my head of rats running over people sleeping on the floor or blankets on the floor in my mind. I guess my brain betrayed me when I typed. Sorry, said that. I can confirm rats can run a business without problems.
Excellent. I've seen that documentary, Ratatouille.
Yeah, that is a documentary. Or Rakakuni, if you have seen Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, that's
God, I love that movie so much. Such a good movie. So she has some clarification, because in our last episode, or the episode 2 episodes ago, we discussed whether or not someone from the streets of London could just sign up for the Navy and work their way up.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yes, she has some clarification. She is just a wealth of random facts about Napoleonic times. Is that what time we're in?
Victorian?
Was Victorian Napoleon's?
Georgian?
Sylvia will be able to tell us.
I will look it up.
Yeah.
I
feel like we're talking Georgian era.
Because we talk about the Napoleonic age, but like there were other kings and queens and stuff at the same time.
Well, that was the early 1800s, so we're just coming out of the Georgian era in England and into the Victorian.
Okay.
Yeah, the Napoleonic era was 1799 to 1815. So
Yeah, that's
I
about the
think
time frame we're looking at.
that's
Who was the King of
Georgian.
England?
When was
George.
Blackadder the Third? That's how
That
I
historical documentary.
mark my history is the Blackadder series.
I believe it was George at that point in the late 1700s or early 1800s.
Was it George the Third? Because America would have just won
George.
independence at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just play Hamilton from start to finish real quick.
All right.
Work it out from there.
Okay, Julian, you're Hamilton. I'll be oh my God, I'm blanking on the guy that shot Hamilton.
Burr.
Burr, thank you. I'll be Aaron Burr. Eloise, you can be every other female character.
All right. Work. Angelica.
And male character.
Eliza and Peggy.
All right, anyway, back to Sylvia's email. Historically, Army and Navy had entirely separate systems. What worked in one didn't necessarily work for the other, and of course, different countries had different systems and they changed over time. But to answer your question, could someone start from zero and work their way to the top? Well, in theory, yes, with some caveats.
Uh-huh.
The higher ranks were few and already taken, and there were only so many ships to distribute. Getting past the mid-range position required not only talent and education, but also good reputation, good contacts, being well liked by your superiors, and well respected by anyone working with you and below you. Of course, someone from a wealthy family, especially if some relative was in the Navy already, wouldn't start from the lowest position. Most likely they'd start in a position that would help them training as an officer, which I think we assumed already that if you were already from a wealthy family, you would just go straight into an officer position. Also, higher ranks required technical skills and education, and there are a number of positions such as cook, doctors, accountants, clerks, and teachers that civilians could slip into pretty easily. I'm paraphrasing there. That's not what Sylvia said. You could take any of them if you needed money, but weren't interested in a career in the Navy. All this is after the reforms of 1740. Julian's very familiar with the reforms of 1740.
Yes, there were reforms during 1740 where they reformed things.
Yep. Before that, the Navy would literally take people and force them to join a ship to get enough crew. Oh, could you imagine that? Navies in other countries used prisoners or people waiting for execution as crew, or took people from the streets and forced them into a ship. Conditions were appalling, disease was rife, food and materials were often rotten at the start. Providers would sell bad stuff to make extra money in the assumption that ships and crews were unlikely to come back, etc., etc. You get the idea. Oh my goodness.
So, job in the Navy, anyone? Job in the Navy? Job in the Navy? Job in the Navy?
Job in the Navy? Well, you don't get a say in it. Get on the ship.
Okay.
You used to start taking barrels of limes with them to stave off disease.
Scurvy.
Hence the term limey.
Oh, yes. Nice.
You limey bastards.
Some navies did hand out ranks according to social status rather than merit, most notoriously the Russians, especially in the late 19th century up to the Soviet Revolution. There was no improvement possible. If you were a sailor or a foot soldier, you'd stay a sailor or foot soldier because you came there as a peasant. No chances to move or earn any better. Nobility would take up the high ranks on both army and navy, even if they had no idea how things worked. You were automatically handed out a title of captain or similar and sent your merry way. So in brief, yes, in the Royal Navy, someone from a wealthy family would skip part of the ladder, so to speak, but it was still possible for someone to start off low, to gain ranks over time, even if they didn't make it to the Admiralty. They'd be high enough to have their own private quarters, a decent life, and a neat uniform, and a pension. Hope this was interesting. Kind regards, Sylvia.
Oh, thank you very much once again, Sylvia, for providing us with context over things that we could easily have Googled but had no desire to because we're lazy.
Is there a movie about a baby that became an admiral? Or was that just a Simpsons?
No, that's a Simpsons joke.
Okay. Good to know.
He redirected the whole fleet to Candy Island.
What's on Candy Apple Island?
Going to Candy Mountain, Charlie.
Is anyone else covered in splitters? If you're below the age of 35, you're not going to understand that reference.
But if you're above the age of 35, you are laughing.
Yes. And quoting it yourself.
Absolutely. All right. Time to get to the meat of everything.
I think so. So you wanted to talk about certain things, Brayton, because obviously, well,
Mm,
not obviously, um, you had a bit of a tragedy, unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, and I know that you
yes.
wanted to sort of discuss that, and we could sort of
Yep.
frame it around coping and grief. And I had a couple of examples to sort of refer back to. So
Yep. I felt
if
like, for some reason, just felt like talking it out, and this seems like a good place of any,
I
as
think
any.
so. So if just content warning for any listeners, we are going to be talking about death and grief and all of the sort of mental health issues that
Mm.
go around that kind of thing in terms of coping and not coping. If you feel like that's not something that you would like to listen to, then we fully support that. This is a safe space. Please stick around if you would like to. Otherwise, yep, skip ahead to the end. Maybe we'll tell a few more jokes.
If not, feel free to tap out now. No judgment at all.
And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
You've listened enough for the analytics to take it that you've listened enough.
Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to talk. So it's been a big year for me, actually. So I started off, first of all, I got an official ADHD diagnosis, which has been a long time coming, and am on Ritalin, which if anyone has ever tried ADHD medication, at least the ones, if you find one that works for you, holy crap, it's amazing. It's like a switch in your brain turns on. You're like, oh, I can do things now. This is amazing. And it's like, is this what normal people feel like all the time?
I'm beginning to think that there are no normal people. I think the people who
There are
say
not.
that they're normal are lying.
I think they are. No one's normal. What is normal? We don't know what normal is.
That's why we're on medication.
If we were normal, we wouldn't be on medication. So, yeah, so in the past, I have had a lot of mental health issues that I have been variously treated for over the years. And turns out a lot of them were probably caused by undiagnosed ADHD, which is a very,
Yeah.
after receiving this diagnosis and looking into it, that is a very common story.
Yes, I have heard.
And then, but that was all kind of, as this process was starting and going on, it was all compounded by the fact that at the late last year, just before Christmas, my brother was diagnosed with brain cancer. And unfortunately, in May, he passed away from it.
Hmm.
He was 28 when he passed away, which is obviously way too young for anyone. I mean, it's a tragedy when anyone passes away for any reason at all.
Hmm.
But especially a young guy just starting out in his career and really finding his feet in life, to have it cut short through something that is just a random happenstance. It was a stage 4 I can never say the word, glioblastoma or something like that. I can't say the word. But essentially, it wasn't a genetic thing. So there's luckily very, not impossible, but a slim chance that myself or any of my other brothers have the gene that will cause it. It's just a random thing that happened. And yeah, so he passed away from that at the end of May. And in all honesty, I have not been coping very well because it was obviously we knew it was coming, but it still doesn't make anything easier. I've made a post on Instagram and the other socials a few days ago. I've had to take some leave from work. When he first passed away, I took about 2 weeks off to deal with that and funeral arrangements and coping with that. And then I thought, okay, I'll get back to work. That'll be a good distraction. And I lasted 3 days at work before it became too much. So my work has been absolutely amazing, and they've allowed me to take some extra time off. And one of the benefits of working in education is that we're coming up to school holidays. So the timing worked out that I was able to just take the last week of the term off. I get my 2 weeks holiday, and then I'm back next term, hopefully in a better place. I have started therapy with a psychologist. I have a psychiatrist to manage my ADHD. And now I have a psychologist to help me manage and guide me through the grieving process. But a lot of that has kind of, and as you do, all of these things that I'm about to kind of talk about and all these feelings, if anyone out there has dealt with grief before, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. And also, all these things I'm about to feel are perfectly normal. So if you are out there experiencing similar things, these feelings are absolutely normal. And it's something I've been working on with my psychologist to kind of get over not get over, that is the wrong word, but to accept the fact that what I am feeling is normal and it's not different, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that it's not abnormal, or it's that you're the only person going through it, or that how do you say it? Like, I must be the only person who is feeling this way because, and it might also be related, obviously, to the fact that you've been recently diagnosed with ADHD. So you've already gone through a very long period of time thinking, how does everyone else cope and I can't? And then it turns out, well, actually, it's because of a chemical imbalance in my brain, and here's some medicine to help fix that. And grief is very much exactly the same, where you experience something that you feel like no one else feels, or that you're feeling it wrong, or that you're feeling it differently to everyone else.
Yes.
But the reality is that everyone else has probably felt the exact same way.
Yes, and that's something my psychologist...
Is it?
Yes.
Parenting. As a new mother, I can definitely remember all of those nights, and even still right now think no one else is behaving the way that I behave or reacting the way I'm reacting.
We all of us have, actually all three of us have a boy and a girl.
Yes.
Actually, all of us have an older boy and a younger girl.
Yeah, it's...
How did that work out?
You're copying me.
Okay, we did. Julian did it first.
Yeah, that's true. And no one gets parenting 100% right all the time. But yeah, that feeling of isolation, I guess you would say.
Yes.
And my psychologist, because this is something I talked to my psychologist about, that feeling of everyone else around me is also grieving. Everyone that knew him is grieving, but it does feel like you're the only one that it affected, which is so not true. But that feeling of I'm the only one that is affected by it is also perfectly normal. And that is an okay feeling to have.
And there's no rule book to this. There's no what am I
wish
actually
there
supposed
was.
to feel. It'd be nice.
It'd be so nice.
But there's no timeline to it. There's no, and part of, from what I understand, just from my own struggles with mental health, I understand with grief, a lot of the time people are like, why aren't I feeling better? Why aren't I okay with this? Because there's no timeline to it. There's just not. It's whatever time it takes. And even the most educated people in this field are really only guessing, because this is, sort of a schematic for it, but everyone's different. Everyone processes it differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one thing that's really become clear to me. Like, I've read, as you do in this day and age, when you're feeling something, you Google, like, is it normal to feel this? And some people, their way of processing was to, I guess, push it to the side is the wrong word to use, but distraction. Find a distraction. For some people, that is work. And if that works for you, great. It did not work for me. Like I said, I lasted 3 days at work and then had to take more time off. It was not helpful at that point in time for me. I think in the future, once I time is the real key to it all. Things take time.
I think that's
okay.
Yeah, that really is. All of the things that we've experienced that we just talked about in the last 30 seconds really does come down to it takes time. Like I've obviously lost a few close people to me, but never in such tragic circumstances. And yeah, it has always just come down to, for me, time passing to sort of, I'm not going to say get over the grief, but to move past the rawness and the intensity of that grief. Like, And it can be applied to that in a lot of different things. Like it can be applied to breakup of relationships. It can be applied to, all of the terrible 2 years of parenting.
That doesn't stop. It just continues.
That's true. You just get used to it.
Alcoholics Anonymous has a saying that is at both times blessedly simple and incredibly complex, in that time takes time.
Mm.
Ooh,
that's all there is to it. Time takes time.
Yeah. And the thing that I want people to kind of understand, or not understand, just something that has really spoken to me that I kind of talked about with my psychologist, is it's non-linear. Like we talk about the stages of grief. You go through all these different stages. Those stages may or may not be accurate. I'm not sure. But it's not a progression of you do this and then this and then this. It's you feel this and then you're fine for like a couple of days. Then all of a sudden you'll see something that triggers something.
Yep.
And you go backwards and you start that whole process again.
The stages of grief is very much one of those things that was written by a neurotypical person, who does get to experience life in that kind of order. But I would definitely say, as a neurodiverse person, that you're probably not going to experience the stages of grief in that order and then have it be completed as such. So, and I've always suspected myself as well, especially in the last couple of years, that I am also undiagnosed ADHD. I'm pretty sure from the literature I've read that I am high functioning ADHD, with like anxiety and perfectionism. And I will think of things randomly, of stuff that happened 20 years ago, and become so emotionally overwrought by it. And it's like, and then I get really angry at myself in the midst of my episode of crying, going, this happened 20 years ago. Why am I still affected by it? So
apparently your brain is better at remembering bad emotions than good.
Yes. I would definitely.
Which is horrible. Why is it designed that way?
Why? It's like we're a bunch of stupid monkeys or something.
Actually, you know what? Evolutionarily, I think it does make sense that the bad experience you remember more vividly because you want to avoid that experience again.
Yes, that is true.
Like it's a basal survival instinct.
It would be nice if our evolution could catch up to the fact that we all live in houses and have security gates and things like that.
I actually read an article today that talked about how it does lead into this conversation, because in terms of depression and anxiety and stuff, we're seeing a huge rise amongst people. And someone theorized that it is because our brains are not actually able to cope with how we have set up society.
Okay.
We are meant to be social creatures working together in a community for a greater good.
Yep.
Whether
greater good.
For a greater good.
The greater good.
Shut it.
Shut it. If you know what that is, call in and we'll be friends forever.
If you call in now, we're not going to answer.
No, sorry. Lines are busy.
What was I saying? Yeah, so we are meant to be out and about, walking around, exploring with other people. We are not meant to be cooped up in an office 8 hours a day, sitting there watching a computer.
We do this ironically over Zoom. None of us are in the same room together.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, and apparently someone theorized that because apparently depression isn't, they were saying that recent scientific thing is that depression is not solely caused by chemical imbalances in the brain. There's so many other factors to consider. And in the past, people have just been like, oh, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, take some medication, you'll be better. But it's not just that. So you have to consider the environment and society and background. And, people like me who are neurodiverse, I was treated for depression in the past, and it was not, I think, as effective because I had other things going on that remained undiagnosed. And that's no doctor or psychologist's fault. It's just what we were doing with the information that we had at the time. But yeah, a lot of it is our brains are hardwired to be a certain way, and the society that ironically we ourselves have set up cannot function. They can't mesh at the moment. So we just need to restructure all of society.
Oh,
Easy.
okay, great. We know what we need to do. Let's go out and do it then.
Julian, that's on you.
Yep. We're tasking you with that. Julian, come back to us in a week. Let us know how you've done.
Horribly.
Okay, great.
I will have done horribly. I
Oh,
will be your new overlord.
okay.
I will be tough but fair. I won't be fair.
You won't be fair.
We'll toil in his underground sugar mines.
Why are they
Yes.
underground?
It's where the sugar is.
I don't think that's how.
Do you know how sugar works, Eloise?
No, I don't think you know how sugar works.
Excuse me. I think I know a little bit about sugar mining.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, but what I was, and in a strange way, that also leads into what I wanted to talk about is some of the feelings I've been having around this is like you do a complete reset and reevaluation of your life up to this point. And that is I think we've all been through that at our lowest points, but it's never been, and this is, I guess for me personally, this is my journey, and I don't want to diminish anyone else's journey, but for me, I've definitely had those moments of, oh, have I made the right decisions in my life to get where I am? Or what do I want to change about my life? And those feelings have never been as strong as they are right now. Wanting to reassess everything in my life and where it is going. And do I need to change something? What do I need to change? I don't know that answer. If anything does need to change, I don't know. But it got me thinking, and in relation to the podcast, is like, how can you use these feelings in a healthy way, in a creative way? So, as you would know, I have been working on a story. I recently hit 20,000 words.
Yay!
Yay! That's, as I said, I put a reel on Instagram and TikTok and the Facebooks and all those. And yeah, 20,000 words was a big milestone for me because I've never actually written that much. Like, not all of it is good. Actually, I'd say a very little amount of it is good, but it's a start. It's something.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this loads of times before. The point is to just write and get it out, and that once it's done, then you go back and you perfect it. And I think we've all had that issue where we hyperfixate on one particular sentence, and you're trying to get the flow of that one sentence perfect before you move on. So the fact that you have managed to get over those kinds of humps and get yourself to 20,000 words is amazing. So well done to you. I'm really proud that you were able to do that.
Yeah, I will say the writing has slowed down over the last week.
You're going to have ebbs and flows.
You know, absolutely.
Swings and roundabouts.
Yep. But there is this idea that I saw online as I was kind of preparing for this episode, is making a shrine for the person you lost. And it is not a literal shrine, as we might think of, like, oh, let's go another 90s deep cut. Helga in Hey Arnold.
What?
She had the shrine to Arnold in her cupboard.
I'm going to say that's a little problematic now, looking back at that.
She's, what, how old is she? 10?
Yeah.
12?
I think having a shrine to everyone, like anyone having a shrine to someone when you're that obsessed with someone, it's not that great.
Jeffrey Dahmer had a shrine to death in his apartment, and I think we all know how well that turned out for him. So let's not badmouth shrines.
Okay, yeah.
Hang on, what are you?
So what I'm talking, and I really liked this idea. It's a metaphorical shrine.
Okay.
But that shrine is what is a shrine? It's a physical representation of something.
Yep.
So the idea is to take that grief and those pains and to try and turn it into something physical, something that you can hold and manipulate and it essentially becomes your emotions about this event or this person. And it's about channeling those feelings in a healthy way rather than what could honestly happen is going in a more unhealthy direction. And that shrine can be anything. It's essentially an outlet. It can just be putting something at their grave, putting some flowers there, putting a plaque or something like that. It could be a painting. It could be writing. It could be whatever you want it to be. And I'm definitely exploring things. Like I built a little plastic robot. If you saw, I got a Gundam model and it was about 8 hours it took me to build that little thing that's only about 20 centimeters high, if that, actually 15 centimeters maybe.
That took you 8 hours.
8 hours of cutting tiny little pieces of plastic and sticking them together.
For some reason, I thought it was Lego. Okay.
No,
that seems more reasonable.
Yes, it's tiny little pieces of plastic that you don't even need glue for. They just slip together.
Wow,
It's amazing.
okay.
The engineering behind it is incredible. But it's about finding what works for you.
Mm.
And that is going to be different for everyone, and everyone's journey is different. I keep saying that. But that is the main thing that's really come out of everything that's happened to me so far. It's that, yes, it is absolutely tragic what has happened, and no one expects it in your life.
No.
Like there are things you expect, like losing a parent. As horrible as that is, there's a part of you that knows that at some point that is going to be something you may have to deal with.
Yep.
I don't think anyone expects your youngest brother to be the one to go first. And, there's a lot of me that didn't know how to cope with that. And there's still a part of me that hasn't accepted what has happened. And it's going to take time. What do they say, Julian? Time takes time?
Time takes time.
Time takes time. And I just wanted to put out there, I guess the point of all this is that for anyone out there, it's that time is short. So try and do something that matters for you. And that can be, like, I'm writing my story. I don't know if it's ever going to be published when I get to the end, if I will want it to be published, but I'm doing it for me. And if you feel like putting something out into the world, and that's one reason I wanted to start this show, is that even if you are reaching just 1 or 2 people and make a difference in their lives, then that is enough. Make sure you do something for you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because you never know what's going to happen.
I think that's really good advice. Like being able to put something out into the world and having left your mark, even if it is so small or not even small like that. I don't know. I feel like I'm saying something is insignificant that way.
No. But it can be, it can be whatever you need it to be. Some people find that volunteering for charities, or just, we had that painted rock thing a few years ago.
That was really cute.
That was lovely.
Keep doing that, people. Why aren't you doing that anymore?
Julian, get onto that.
Yes.
Add it to your
to-do list. Have a week,
list.
Julian. Report back.
I can predict it will go terribly.
It went terribly.
I can do one of those tasks well and the other terribly. It's your choice which one's which.
All right.
Can you do both of them half-assed?
I mean, he would anyway.
Well, yeah, neither's going to be my best work.
I'm trying to work out the math here of how we can get the most benefit out of...
No benefit.
Okay.
Just the least troublesome.
Thank you for being here, Jill.
Your input is welcome.
Yes.
Always.
I'm a very important part of the team.
You are. It's interesting that you mentioned shrines, actually, Brayton, because like when I think of shrines, I immediately think of Japan, actually, because obviously building shrines to people, especially to ancestors and people that have passed away and praying to them is very much a big part of the Japanese culture. I was actually thinking to myself in terms of authors that might have written things in terms of processing their griefs and who I could think about bringing to the podcast. And my mind immediately actually turned to the story Grave of the Fireflies, which the Studio Ghibli anime studio did Grave of the Fireflies back in the, gosh, when was it? The 80s, I'm pretty sure. Here, so if no one's ever heard of Grave of the Fireflies, it's not part of the catalog on Netflix, so it's actually quite hard to get. But essentially,
I hear it is devastating, like emotionally.
Oh, yes. It is one of those films where it's like a must-see once in your life and then never watch it again because it will leave you emotionally overwrought because of the subject matter, essentially. It is set in Japan immediately after the war, the World War II has ended, and it follows a brother and sister who are orphans, having been orphaned from the war, essentially trying to survive and what they have to go through to survive. And spoiler alerts, they don't. And it's a very harrowing ending, which is essentially symbolized of their ghosts doomed to repeat the same actions over and over again of them, like coming out of the war immediately and then going through all of the pain that they went through. And it is an emotionally devastating film, but it was written by, and I'm just going to quickly find his name.
Hey, is it a Miyazaki? It's not a Miyazaki.
No, so it was written and directed by Takahata, who was one of the 3 founding members of Studio Ghibli, but it is based on a semi-autobiographical novel by Akiyuki Nosaka, a 1967 autobiographical or semi-autobiographical novel, also called Grave of the Fireflies. And it was essentially loosely based on his own experience as a child immediately after the end of World War II. His father died during the Tokyo fire bombings, and he had 2 sisters. One died of malnutrition and the other of like disease or something. So he like that book became essentially a homage to processing his grief and his experience over what had actually happened to him. And obviously it's something that would be very triggering for a lot of people. But also the further we get away from World War II, the further away we get from firsthand experiences to the point where it just becomes history. And that's the danger of where history starts to repeat itself when you don't have the people who experienced it to say exactly why things happened and how to prevent them. So a book that is thoroughly recommended and a movie that's thoroughly recommended if you're in an emotional place to consume those things.
Yeah, I might skip that for now.
I would suggest you skip that, yes. Honestly, I've not seen Grave of the Fireflies, and I do not feel any compunction to see it anytime soon. I'm actually going through the Studio Ghibli back catalogue with my husband and his cousin and his cousin's husband, where we get together once a month and watch all of the films in order, basically. So we were delightfully
even the Goro Miyazaki ones.
Yeah, we're gonna sit through the Goro Miyazaki, sitting in the long shadow of his father. We were up to Whisper of the Heart the other day, which is a delightful slice of life film, kind of like a semi-romance between 2 teenagers. It was marketed as a fantasy because part of the story is one of the girls in it. Well, one of the girls, the main character is writing a fantasy novel, and you sometimes get glimpses of the fantasy novel like on screen. And it's about a cat called the Baron, who's voiced in the English dubbing by Carrie Elways. So, but it was a really, really well done film, and it was very delightful. So if you would like something that is a bit lighthearted, I thoroughly recommend that one.
If I can interrupt for a second, Eloise,
yes,
just since we're talking about Ghibli, the listeners won't get the full thing, but do you want to show off your tat?
Oh yes. So if
I'll post the video
it's
online.
kind of hard to see it from this angle.
That's fine.
Yeah, there you go. So and that's backwards as well in the in the camera. So, but that is the Studio Ghibli logo. So that's Totoro facing in that direction and baby Totoro sitting on his head.
Your very first tattoo.
It was my very first tattoo, part of my 40 before 40. So you can tell I'm a massive fan of Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki's work specifically. But watching Whisper of the Heart, I couldn't help but say out loud, watching it, everyone in this film has ADHD. All of the characters, like seriously, they play like, oh, she's so forgetful and she's so whimsical and she's always focusing on the wrong things. I'm like, yeah, they've all got ADHD. It was very obvious, but it is a film from the 90s, so probably, and it's Japan, so probably not quite.
You know what?
Diagnosed.
I was going to say, since my diagnosis, I look at other people or things like that and just go like, that person's got it, and that person's got it,
Yeah.
and that person's got it. And I really shouldn't, because
it's not your place.
it is not my place. But there is definitely like a Venn diagram of like, quote unquote, normal behavior and ADHD behaviors that do cross over.
Yes.
It's just how much on one side of those lines you lean.
How much before they become just like two circles on top of each other.
Yeah.
So sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, it's fine. I think I've kind of said everything I wanted to say. I just needed to voice out there, and I will end at least this section. I don't know how much more. We might talk about some happy stuff at the end, but I just wanted to put out there that if you do think you have ADHD or autism, if you think you are neurodivergent and you are able to pursue a diagnosis, I know that it can be expensive. Unfortunately,
and just exhausting, funnily enough.
It is expensive and exhausting. I've had 2 psychiatrist appointments, which have included questionnaires, talks with my wife about her observations. He called my parents and talked to my mother about her observations. Lots of questionnaires, and I have another appointment in July to follow up again. So it is a long process. I first made my appointment back in September last year, and I didn't get in until March this year.
Yeah,
it is and that is relatively quick. I have heard people having long wait times for this. So if you think you are neurodivergent and you want to pursue a diagnosis and are able to pursue a diagnosis, I highly recommend it, because you learn so much about yourself in that journey. And I have found it has helped me so much, and has helped me be kinder to myself for those moments of, especially like Eloise, you said 20 years ago, I have those moments too. We all do. But looking back on it now, it's, oh, I did that because of this, and it is not my fault. And I think that helps a lot. It helps you be kinder to yourself in those situations.
I don't know. Blaming myself is like something I like to do. So.
But I also wanted to say that at the moment, yes, I am really struggling with my mental health at the moment, but I am doing okay. Like I said, I am going to therapy regularly, weekly therapy, at least for the time being. And if you out there are struggling with your mental health or just going through a moment, please reach out and talk to someone. Anyone, send us a message.
We're happy to listen.
We are happy to listen. We may or may not have good advice. I mean, look at the title of the show, but I am always happy to listen to people and just let people rant if you need it. But please, if you feel the need to reach out to a friend, family, us, anyone. There are lots of good support groups online. I know Reddit have a few different subreddits where you can reach out.
Maybe don't always just go to Reddit. And
no,
I'm
just thinking off the top of my head. But please, if you feel a need, seek out professional help.
Yes,
because it is invaluable.
That's a really important thing to put out there, because if you're like me, the way I was raised, you try and ride it out. You just try and deal with it and carry on. But I can tell you from very personal experience, you're one bad day away from the difference between riding it out and just giving up. So definitely seek professional help, seek your friends, seek anyone who will listen.
I was just doing a quick Google before, and I thought I would come up with a couple of books to recommend in terms of dealing with grief. So the top few that seemed to come up was Lonely Planet's Guide to Death, Grief, and Rebirth. Another one that seems to be very popular is Bearing the Unbearable by, can I pronounce her name? Joanne Cacciatore. Oh, is it Cacciatore? Oh gosh, I don't.
Sure.
Cacciatore, PhD.
It's pronounced Patrick Stewart.
Yes, no, they're not going to understand that joke.
Oh, we do.
Stop laughing.
we need to explain the joke.
No, we're not going to explain that joke.
Totally
And another one.
The joke.
Basically, Eloise thinks any British actor is Patrick Stewart.
Not,
She
no,
can't
she's
tell them
really.
apart
That's
at all.
not what happens.
It's horrible. We've been talking back and forth about the new Doctor Who episodes, and she keeps saying, "Oh, I loved it when Patrick Stewart came out of when Patrick Stewart came out of the Millennium Falcon."
No,
it was, and I'm like, Eloise, that's not it at all.
Oh my god,
you're confused again.
It's not always Patrick Stewart.
It's not. Stop it.
Sorry, Eloise, I just ruined a moment of you actually trying to be useful.
Well, we all know what the name of the podcast is.
Yes.
There was one other
please.
book that I thought that you might appreciate. It's called the Fuck Death Workbook, an honest journal for getting through grief without the condolences, sympathy, and other BS by Steve Case. So I thought you might appreciate that one, Brayton. If you
I love that. I'm literally writing that down.
Excellent. All
I'm
of them
looking
are
into that
available
one.
on Booktopia. We're not affiliated.
We would love to be.
We would love to be. If
they would like to pay us,
come and,
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
I would love for this to become profitable.
So we can all quit our jobs and move to the Caribbean.
Why would we move to the Caribbean?
I don't know. Isn't that where we go? All right. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so through all of the usual channels on Facebook, Instagram. Brayton, what's the email address again?
That was not Patrick Stewart, Eloise. We told you before.
Stop that.
At gmail.com.
Stop it.
It's actually not helpfulpod@gmail.com.
Thank you.
And Eloise, if you could, we'll put the names of all those books in the show notes.
Yep.
If you could send me a list, I'll also put a few resources if you are struggling with your mental health or just need someone to chat to. I'll put some links in the show notes for you as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening in. I've already said all of those things. I was about to start saying get in touch with us again. Oh my god, what's wrong with my brain?
Let's
Too busy thinking about Patrick Stewart.
Yep.
It's because I've got ADHD and I haven't been diagnosed.
You should go get diagnosed if you are able and you want to.
Oh, but you
don't have to. It's all right.
I'll just struggle along continually and then complain about it.
No, but that's the thing that I have learned. Sorry, we're wrapping up. But that's the thing. Some people don't want the diagnosis because they are fine. They can just accept that, yep, I have this and don't need the formal diagnosis, and that's fine too.
Yes.
I'm fine.
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 We're all fine.
As your eyes twitch.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. I've been Eloise.
Thank you, everyone.
That is Brayton and Julian with me, and we will see you next time.
Hopefully a much happier episode next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.